Hey, what's up everybody? Chris here, and today I'm bringing you my review of Bride of Chucky, which is the fourth movie in the Child's Play franchise, and it definitely marks a turn for an entirely different direction in a lot of ways from what we've seen with the first three movies. So the first three movies I think are pretty consistent in tone and atmosphere and presentation in terms of how those movies are set up, and if you haven't seen my reviews for those, I'll link them down below so you can check those out. Bride of Chucky was directed by Ronnie Yu, and the only other movie that stands out for me as being familiar as one of his pieces of work from his filmography is Freddy vs. Jason. And I can see a lot of parallels between Freddy vs. Jason and Bride of Chucky in terms of how he directed that movie. It's interesting how you see some director trademarks kind of stand out, and even though this is only two movies, you see in Bride of Chucky that you have sort of the central protagonist, the characters who are, using a van as sort of a main setting for the movie, and you have that in Freddy vs. Jason too. So he's got something with vans that he really likes, apparently. And even at the very beginning of the movie, at the introduction, you get to see some references to Michael Myers and to Friday the 13th, Jason Voorhees, and that sort of thing. So it's clear going into this, I think, that he had some aspirations to work on some crossover movies, which he was able to do not too long after having made this movie. I think Freddy vs. Jason came out in 2003, but you can see that he's really got those ambitions, and clearly he enjoys, horror movies as a franchise and has a lot of respect for those. So, in terms of the overall quality, this is where the Child's Play series really leans into being a B movie, for better or worse. Bride of Chucky, in my mind, is actually more of a comedy than it is a horror movie. You see some comedic elements in Child's Play 1, 2, and 3, but here it really kind of hams it up in a way that I think works at times, but more often than not just is sort of a tone-breaking sort of thing. For whatever reason, I just didn't buy into this in the same way that I did with the first three movies. It's a movie that has its moments, right? But before I get into that, let me just quickly summarize the plot. So Child's Play 3 ends up with Chucky being shredded by a fan after Andy Barclay drops him off of a mountain that's inside of a funhouse set, sort of a Hall of Mirrors type thing with a little mini roller coaster. But one of Charles Lee Ray's ex-flames, an old girlfriend, pays off a police officer to get Chucky's remains, the doll's remains, the evidence, from an evidence room. And of course she kills the police officer once he delivers it. She stitches Chucky back together, uses the Voodoo for Dummies book to resurrect him, and then of course they sort of go on a killing spree together. But not before she locks him away in a playpen as sort of a plaything. He escapes, kills her, and then manages to transfer her soul into a doll so that he can have a companion. And so the doll's name is Tiffany, or the person's name is Tiffany. And so you've got sort of that dynamic in the movie, which is different, and they just spend a lot of time kind of making jokes with one another. At one point, Chucky is even apologizing to her for not having spent more time with her and not having been a more faithful love interest. It doesn't work well to me. Again, the movie has its moments. There are some parts that are, grossly comedic and funny, in sort of that classic Child's Play sense, but there's never, in my opinion, ever any kind of tension here. Not in the same way as you see in the first three movies, and especially the first movie. So, as the movie plays on, it gets, increasingly absurd, which again, for a movie about a killer doll is not necessarily a bad thing, but once we get to the end of the movie where the protagonist, who these two dolls, these two serial killers, essentially Tiffany and Charles Lee Ray, are trying to possess. They're in a Winnebago. They flip the Winnebago over. And I should mention, before I get too far ahead of myself, there is a sex scene with the two dolls, which is ridiculous. But, they end up struggling. And of course, as is the case with all these movies, Chucky is defeated. Tiffany is defeated, but not before she gives birth to a baby doll that comes out of her womb screaming with sharp teeth and then murders a police officer who happens to be in the scene. So to me, this movie is pretty forgettable. Again, it has its moments. It's mildly entertaining, but only mildly. In the pantheon of Chucky movies or Child's Play movies, I would give this a score of 5 out of 10. Again, it's kind of watchable, but would I really recommend it? No, not really. I would say if you've never seen any of the Child's Play movies, focus on the first two, especially. I think those are the ones to focus on. And, after having watched this, I was reminded that I had seen, pieces of this movie over the years. But coming up next is Seed of Chucky, which apparently is focused on that baby that is born, the baby killer doll that is born. And I have a feeling this is going to be the worst of the series, because I have seen Curse of Chucky, the last one, and I'm going to rewatch it and review that one as well. And it was actually pretty good. So I think this next one's going to be the stinker of the series, the true stinker of the series. But again, it's hard to recommend for me, Bride of Chucky. Even though, based on the name, based on Chucky's appearance, where he's this sort of sewn together grotesquerie of a thing, it's trying to pay homage to some classic horror movies, but it's just, a really forgettable entry in the series, I think. So if you've seen the movie, if you liked it, let me know what you think. But as Chucky says in this movie, and I'll give him credit for this one line,
a true classic never goes out of style.
So again, thanks for watching, and I hope everybody has a great day.